Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung, and today we are going into the bye week. We are discussing what the Miami Dolphins need to fix if they are actually going to continue their playoff run here, folks. Now, if anybody watched during the post-game show after the Dolphins lost to the Kansas City Chiefs by a score of 21-14, you all know that I was very upset. I was very disappointed how it all went down, even though I had actually chosen the Dolphins to lose against Kansas City, but I was expecting a much more high-scoring game. I was expecting the Dolphins defense to continue to be the weak point in this whole thing. I was expecting the offense to put up a whole bunch of points, go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, and to an extent, that kind of came true, but not in the way that I was wanting it to. I will explain all of my thoughts. I will get everything out on the table just to make sure that everything is clarified, everything is clear, and everybody can understand what it is that I'm trying to say. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. This show is now also affiliate sponsored by My Nintendo Store. So we're all gamers at heart, I truly believe that, and Nintendo has been there for us for nearly 50 years, creating all-time classics that are remembered by every generation growing up. Whether you were with the original Super Mario Brothers or you're just brand new getting into the world of Mario, they have something for you. And right now they have special deals going on for what are sure to be more top-selling games in Nintendo's endlessly long lineup. For instance, Super Mario RPG, a classic from the days of the Nintendo 64, is being completely remastered from the ground up and will be releasing on November 17th for new audiences or old audiences wanting to relive their childhood to enjoy Mario's first ever RPG adventure. A lot of it has been maintained from the old one, so you're not going to be missing out on anything with this remake. And right now is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It is out. It is available for you guys. It's their latest completely new game that is already receiving rave reviews from both critics and actual gamers alike. All you have to do to get in on this is click the links in the description below on this video to order or pre-order either of these awesome titles, and you'll be receiving bonus items upon making your purchase. So head on down to the links in the description below, make your purchase. My Nintendo Store, your best and quickest gateway to the world of Nintendo. Alright everybody, so let's get into this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get into the negative stuff first because I want to be able to end the show on a good note. Because there is some good things to take from what happened against the Kansas City Chiefs. And during post-game, I was hyper-focused on everything that went wrong because I felt like we were dismissing it. We were just acting like it wasn't that big of a deal. But for me, it is something that 100% needs to be addressed, and I feel like that it needs to be fixed quickly if the Dolphins are going to find any sort of long-term success. So the most annoying thing, at least for me, it was Tyreek Hill. And I am sorry if nobody else wants to call this out, if nobody else wants to act like it's a big deal, but for me, it's something that I don't appreciate. From the outside looking in, Tyreek Hill made it a point to talk about how he was going to light up the Kansas City Chiefs, that he was going to make them regret ever trading him. He was this motivated, unstoppable force of nature that was going to show Kansas City why it was a mistake to get rid of him. And everything that he's done on offense for the Dolphins ever since he got here has been mostly phenomenal. It has been unbelievable what kind of an impact he has had on this team since he got here. In a good way. In a very good way. But here's where I draw the line. And this is where I say enough's enough. Every time it feels like Tyreek opens his mouth and starts talking about how amazing somebody is, even if it's Tua, even if he talks about how accurate, how amazing Tua is, all it does is rile up the other team's defense to make it a point to say, oh yeah, watch this. In this case, he was talking about himself. The quote being, they gonna get this work. That was the quote. Tyreek talking about himself going to do some amazing things against Kansas City. And that's what he said. So what was this incredible game that Tyreek Hill ended up having? He had 8 catches, okay, but only 62 yards, 0 touchdowns. He was targeted 10 times. Oh, and he had a rush for 1 carry for 3 yards. Okay, but those numbers are actually leading the Dolphins in receiving, so you would think, okay, the offense just had a bad game, which ultimately they did. But here's the thing, and if somebody doesn't, and we don't want to boil it down to just this one play, then you're free to do so. I don't necessarily boil it down to just this one play. There were many opportunities where the Dolphins could have done something better. But this really, right here, is the big one. Tyreek Hill catches a screen from Tua. He fumbles the ball, and it gets returned for a touchdown. And that touchdown by Kansas City happened right when the Dolphins were driving. They were getting really close to putting up some points, possibly scoring a touchdown, at the very least a field goal that could have made it at least 3-14 before the half. And that would have been a great way to at least get some momentum in your favor, because the Dolphins would have been getting the ball back in the second half regardless. Instead, Tyreek fumbles, it gets returned for a touchdown, and that touchdown was the last point that the Chiefs would score all game long. And that right there is proof positive. That one error, that one key mistake was the game changer. If Tyreek Hill had not fumbled the ball right there, if the Dolphins had managed to even score a field goal and everything else had remained exactly the same, Miami wins 17-14. That was the difference right there. And it was Tyreek who was responsible. It was not Tua for throwing the ball in a funky place. It was not the only one you can even look at and say it's his fault. Tyreek did not hang on to the ball. He didn't hang on to it. And so there was a little bit of an argument. Was Tyreek actually catching it? Did he actually complete the catch? The ultimate answer there was yes, he did. And so that was the end of the discussion. So for me, it's getting annoying, particularly with Tyreek, because for these past couple of games now, we've recently been noticing these errors. I don't know if it's mental errors or if there's maybe something wrong with him physically that nobody knows about, but he's been making a lot of drops. He's been making a lot of key mistakes in very, very inopportune moments. And so if I'm looking at Tyreek Hill, I'm saying, dude, before you can start being all braggadocious about how amazing you are and what you're going to do to your former team or any other team, make sure you clean up your act first. You can't be making key drops, which he has done. He did it in Kansas City too. There was a pass that went right through his hands, I think a couple of times, that could have been a big time momentum gainer for the Dolphins. And it went right through him. Now, granted, there were a couple of moments where if Tua had gotten in just a tinier bit better of a spot, if he had been just a little bit quicker, then it might have been easier for Tyreek. But your MO is to be a superstar NFL wide receiver. You're supposed to do everything you can to make it easier for your quarterback to make plays. And these past few games, he hasn't been doing that. He's been doing some really great things, but always in a very key moment that could have been a game breaker, he seems to make an error. But only in this game and the Eagles game and things like that has it become a problem to the point where Dolphins miss out on opportunities. So that's point number one for me with Tyreek Hill. You need to get your act together and stop making those mental errors. That's where a lot of my frustration is. Just don't talk. Seriously, don't get all high and mighty on yourselves. You guys are now 6-3. You could have stolen at least one road game, could have gone into the bye 7-2. And I realize that it is incredibly arrogant to be able to complain about the fact that Miami is 6-3 heading into the bye week. We have 3 more wins than we have losses, and all 3 losses have been to potential Super Bowl contending football teams. So for me to come out here and complain about this, I get that it seems a little disingenuous. But the fact of the matter is, these Dolphins have lost these games not because of some outside factor. The most one you can look at is the Eagles. 10 penalties against Miami as opposed to 0 against Philadelphia. That is incredibly sketchy, I understand. But even still, the Dolphins were right there, and they could have won that game if they had just executed when they needed to. So Mike McDaniel's goal going into the bye week right now, especially on offense, fix the mental mistakes. Fix these penalties. Fix these mental errors, these drops, these slightly off-target throws, the timing of it all. That's where a lot of the frustration is. The next bit of frustration I have, particularly on offense, this is where another thing they need to work on. You guys have to figure out a way to get physical. You do. Because so far, the Dolphins have faced 3 physical football teams. Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles, and at least on defense, the Kansas City Chiefs. They are physical football teams. And 3 times the offense has come up short. So that does not seem like it is a coincidence to me. The Dolphins are getting punched in the mouth, and they're not answering back. I said on the postgame show, I do not believe at this point that speed can overcome power. I really don't. I think that if you're going to beat a team with that has power football as their MO, you're going to have to be able to find a way to punch back. You have to fight power with power. Speed only works if you are fast enough to be able to overcome the power that they show, which means that you cannot get thrown off your route by a shove at the line of scrimmage and then you're off target because you're supposed to be at this spot at this particular moment, but you're not there because you got thrown off and now you're a few feet to the right or a few feet to the left, or you're 2 yards away from where you're supposed to be on your route, and the whole timing gets thrown off and the offense gets thrown off as a whole. Same thing goes for Jalen Waddle. Cannot get thrown off at the line of scrimmage. Cedric Wilson can't fall down. Tua and Cedric Wilson right at the end of that Kansas City Chiefs game. You cannot have a miscommunication. Cedric Wilson was open going into the end zone. That would have tied the game. Tua threw a little loft way, way behind him. That could only be described as a miscommunication. There was no other explanation for it, and Tua eventually did confirm it during the post conference that yes, there was a miscommunication. They were not on the same page. Can't afford that stuff, especially not on the road against Super Bowl contending football teams. You guys have to clean this up. They have to. They just have to clean it up. That is my main goal right now for the Dolphins going into the bye week. Take some time, regroup, recollect. You've got a fairly easy string of games coming up now. You could potentially get everything all settled down, and you can become, once again, a real playoff contending football team. But you've got to get this stuff cleaned up, because if these mistakes keep happening, these drops, these penalties, these mental miscues, that last play to end the game, whether you want to blame Connor Williams for an errant snap to the right, whether you want to blame Tua for the fact that he couldn't catch it, that was the most embarrassing way that game could have ended. Mind you, up until that last set of downs, Raheem Mostert had been running like an angry person, and he had been getting a ton of yards, and Raheem Mostert even said that, hey, I was saying that we needed to run the football, and it worked. It actually worked. They were driving. They were this close to tying the football game, and then they went right back to Tua again, which I understand in most circumstances you would absolutely want the ball in Tua's hands because he is the way that this offense functions. I can still acknowledge that without Tua, this offense does not work the way it's supposed to. But at the same time, going away from something that is actively working, the Chiefs had no answers, at least on that last drive, for Raheem Mostert. Why would you go away from it, especially if you still had 2 timeouts to spare? If nothing else, he could have run out of bounds, stopped the clock that way, and you wouldn't have needed to burn a timeout. So why didn't you? So in that sense, there's also frustration with Mike McDaniel and his play calling. So we're back to the whole won't run the football thing. I get that it wasn't really working all that well against Kansas City. I would question why they were trying to go to Savon Ahmed so often. So I would say that personnel choices might be in question with him. I'm not saying or advocating that Mike McDaniel needs to be fired. Please do not somehow get that in your heads that I don't like Mike McDaniel. He is still the best head coach we have had since Don Shula. I truly believe that at this point. There is no competition in that regard. But that doesn't mean that Mike McDaniel is perfect. He's still got a lot to learn. I feel like he's got to learn to just go with the hot hand and not necessarily worry about just shifting people around and making rotations. At the end of the game, when everything is on the line, you got to go with your best players. And Raheem Mostert right now, until the return of Devon Achane, and then you guys can have a discussion about who's better. Until then, you give the ball to Raheem Mostert. Nobody else is having as much success as he is in this offense as a running back. So now I've had my say with the whole Dolphins offense thing. They've got to get it cleaned up. But I want to, like I said, I want to end this show on a good note. And this is what I'm going to say. For the Miami Dolphins to hold the Kansas City Chiefs offense to only 14 points is phenomenal. And the way that they were playing against Patrick Mahomes, there were a lot of times during that game where Mahomes looked just very uncomfortable with what he was doing. I understand that he didn't have a whole lot of weapons to choose from. I mean, Marquez, Valdez, Scantling, you have Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman Jr., that's the one he's probably familiar with, Kadarius Toney. Like, all of these guys that you're listing here, none of these guys are necessarily superstars by any stretch. In fact, not a single player on the entire Kansas City Chiefs roster had more than 3 catches in that game. Noah Gray was the leading receiver. 3 catches, 34 yards. For the 25-yard catch was the longest one. You had Sky Moore, 2 catches, 33 yards. Jerick McKinnon, 2 catches, 22 yards. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 2 catches, 22 yards. Kadarius Toney, 1 catch for 18 yards. Rashee Rice, 2 catches, 17 yards, and that touchdown. And then as for Travis Kelce, the great Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce, he had 3 catches for 14 yards. He was a complete non-factor in that game. And we need to give credit where it is due. I was frustrated with Vic Fangio earlier this season, but you know what? He's done a fantastic job now that he has all the pieces that he needs in place. David Long Jr. was a phenomenal player, 8 total tackles. Javon Holland, 8 total tackles. Zach Sealer hit the quarterback twice, 7 tackles total. Jalen Phillips was a beast. By the way, Bradley Chubb, again, doing some incredible things. Jalen Phillips got a sack. Bradley Chubb got a sack. They might be getting credited for the same one. I have to double check some different stats here. This is just the ESPN box score. But Bradley Chubb forcing that fumble, that was a huge play for the Dolphins on defense, and it set the tone for what should have been their game tying or even game winning comeback. Bradley Chubb has lit it up in these past few games. Maybe Vic Fangio has gotten to him. Maybe this was just the opportunity that Bradley Chubb needed to finally get himself settled in. And now that Jalen Ramsey has returned, that he and Xavier Howard together did a phenomenal job against the Kansas City Chiefs offense. It was incredible. Christian Wilkins had a big game. He was all over the place. Andrew Van Ginkel, he didn't get a whole lot as far as his numbers, 3 total tackles, but he was causing some havoc back there. He was. And we're getting Nick Needham he's going to get back into this. There's so many options now for the Dolphins on defense. So the fact, again, Kansas City is considered the cream of the crop of the NFL. They went into Germany and pretty much 90% of the fans in that stadium, which was 100% filled to capacity, by the way, was Chiefs fans. The Dolphins fans were completely outnumbered. Everybody loves the Chiefs, no matter where you go. And still, that defense, with Vic Fangio leading the charge, held the Kansas City Chiefs to a total of 21 points. And as far as their team stats, let me just break this down for you real quick. They had 267 total yards, which was less than Miami. And they had 4 less first downs than Miami. But granted, less than a minute, they had less time of possession than Miami. So the only excuse that you have for the Dolphins losing this game at this point was the fact that offense was not able to execute. The defense did everything humanly possible, including stopping the Kansas City Chiefs from scoring a single point in the second half. They were incredible. And if this is what we can expect from the Dolphins moving forward on defense, all Mike McDaniel has to do is get this offense to stop making mistakes, and that is the team that will be unstoppable. That is the unstoppable team. Their defense is already good to go. Ramsey, Howard, Javon Holland, Deshaun Elliott, David Long, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, who's come on, Zach Sealer. You have Andrew Van Ginkel still causing chaos. There are so many players right now who are playing at a high level on that defense. Is it perfect? No. Of course it's not perfect. No defense is ever going to be perfect. We will have this discussion, I am sure, about how frustrated we were that so-and-so did amazing things and we're frustrated that it happened. We always want the defense to basically stop teams from getting even 10 yards. Even like if they get a first down, it's a frustrating moment for us as fans to watch a defense. But this defense did incredible things against Kansas City. They deserve the credit for it. And quite frankly, the only thing that is holding the Miami Dolphins back now is their number 1 ranked offense. Can you imagine? I want to be positive. I want to be excited for this team. It's very difficult to do that right after a loss. I want the Dolphins to focus in on themselves, get themselves right. Don't make mental miscues. Keep your words to yourself. Don't give other teams ammunition to be extra motivated. These teams don't need extra motivation to want to beat you. They already have enough motivation on their own. Stay within yourselves. Focus on you. Get yourself all cleaned up. You have a week off to get yourself rested and recovered. Robert Hunt will probably be back. Connor Williams has another chance to rest. Teron Armstead has another chance to rest. All of these guys are going to be healthier than ever, and we've got some easier games coming up. So this is the Miami Dolphins' opportunity to go on a real run here and prove to everybody once again that at the very least, they can beat the teams they're supposed to beat, which there are a lot of those teams. Dolphins are still going to make the playoffs. Whether it's through the wild card or the AFC East division, however you want to put it, they are going to make these playoffs. But once the playoffs start and it's time to win some football games, that's when it's going to be so important. You guys take this time, recuperate, get yourselves in order, and start reminding everybody that the Dolphins are not a joke. That's going to be it for this show. My voice is starting to go out, so I'm going to have to take it. I'm going to have to end it here. I appreciate everybody listening to this rant. I needed to get this out because I love this Miami Dolphins football team. It is the most talented Miami Dolphins football team that we have had in my lifetime. I truly believe that. Ever since I've been watching football, this is probably the most talented team that I've ever seen. Miami has an opportunity here to do some things that they have not done ever since I was a child. So I am hoping that everything works out. Mike McDaniel gets these guys back on track, which I believe that he will, and the defense continues to develop and reach a point where now we can say, okay, this is a Super Bowl caliber football team. Everybody has their hiccups. Kansas City had a hiccup against Denver. So I'm not going to look at this game and say the end of the world is here. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of the narratives that have been coming out about how the Dolphins cannot beat football teams. I picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win because I had trouble trusting it, and it turns out I was right, unfortunately. Hopefully, in the next few games, Dolphins will go back to their winning ways and make everybody else happy again. If you have not already done so, make sure that you are getting on your winning ways and go to prizepicks.com. Use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. And of course, use the links in the description below to go to My Nintendo Store. The Super Mario RPG is available for pre-order right now. It releases on November 17th, and Super Mario Wonder is also available down there. You get bonus items for making the purchase through those links, so don't delay. Get on down there. Get started today. We will see you all on Tuesday for Pulse of Fins Nation, 7:30 p.m., and another episode of Fins Nation at 5 a.m. sharp. We will see you all next time.